Hey everyone, welcome to our panel, a long time ago, a history of Star Wars games. I'm Straight Jacket Jim.
And I'm Inferno.
So since 1982, we've had a lot of different Star Wars games coming out. That was when the first one came out. So whether it's playing as people like Luke Skywalker or Han or Leia, or even ancillary characters like Wedge Antilles, and then some completely new ones like Dash Rendar and Cal Kestis. So Star Wars gaming has been with us for almost 40 years, and as a story guy, I loved how it added to everything Star Wars.
And the games we're going to talk about is not every single game. There's not enough time. We've talked about for years about how much we love Star Wars games, and we could be here for years, but we've only got an hour, so we're going to give you our best game, a couple of our favourites. We'll talk about some that we may not like so much, and then the future of Star Wars gaming.
We were having a bit of a discussion about this because a lot of these games came out when I was a kid, and just thinking about, were they good because they were Star Wars? And once again, we talked about how like when I was a kid, anything Star Wars I would just absorb and loved it because it was Star Wars. And looking back on some of these games, you wonder, did we love them because they were good games or because they were Star Wars? So. We're going to reflect on some of those and just see how they were.
Okay, so the first one for me is called Star Wars Arcade. So it came out in 83. I was born in 81, so a bit too young for that. But I didn't play it till 1991, so when I was 10. I have the fondest memories of playing at my friend's house, Dobbo. Shout out to Dobbo. Playing upstairs at his house, eating Chocky Bickies, and just the vector graphics were, at the time, as best as we had seen before. It's my very first Star Wars game. We just loved it, and we played it as kids all the time. It is wireframe graphics, so going back to it now, it's not so kind. But you mentioned you played it as an arcade?
Yeah, I did. I remember I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, and I found it in an arcade.
Yep.
But it was hard for me to get my head around, and you can see the video that we've got off to the side here. Like, looking at it now, like trying to work out what to shoot, and then working out, I think, was it this one that you could shoot the lasers coming at you as well?
Could. Yep, the missiles.
And, and most of the time I'm sitting there going, well, I can't avoid these things. How do I get around them? But yeah, it was just, it was a bit hard for me going back to that, because it must have been about a similar time to you that I probably found it, like early 90s sometime. But yeah, it was just hard.
Because we always had Dobbo's little brother just pointing out, saying, shoot there, shoot there, shoot there. And so one of us would drive and the other one would shoot, especially in the trench run scenes as well. It was really fun, and shooting that exhaust port was just the best feeling ever for a 10-year-old.
Nice.
It also had voices like digitized voices of Mark Hamill, Alec Guinness, James Earl Jones. And that was the only game we had for years, so played it to death. Loved it.
Nice. That would have been awesome, like having seen the movies for so long, and then to come along and like hear your voice acting people in there. And like, because I remember, we'll talk about it a bit later, but Super Star Wars only had one voice clip, and that was Alec Guinness saying, "May the use the Force, Luke." And I just remember getting chills when that happened too.
That's right.
Which segues quite nicely into my next one. So the first Star Wars game I remember playing properly was Super Star Wars. So it was had it on the Super Nintendo, and once again, it must have been about 7 or 8 when we got it. As you can see from the video here, there's one of the things that I grew to detest about it was being pushed around by the enemies. So they just pushed you around and pushed you around, so much so that there's a level outside the sandcrawler where you have to climb up the side of the sandcrawler to get to it. But I just kept on getting pushed off, so I'd get almost up the top, and then I'd end up right back down the bottom again and have to start again. And that's when I found out, there's a timer in this game, but it doesn't matter. Only thing it adds to is your score. Even things like, the Super Nintendo was capable of saving games, but this one chose not to for whatever reason. Although I do remember having, there was a cheat you could put in so you could have level select, and I think it all had to be done on the second controller for a single player game and stuff like that. But even using some of the levels that it had, like the land speeder level, and right at the end, the X-Wing level on the surface of the Death Star, like it used the Super Nintendo's chip. I think it was Star Fox that used. I think there was like an enhanced chip there, but even Mode 7, I think it was called, on the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
And it used that fairly well in terms of having your 3D graphics in those sorts of levels too.
Yeah.
But I have very fond memories of playing this game. It is very hard, even going back to it today. Like there's still a lot of Super Nintendo play out there with because Super Mario World's still a very popular game.
Yep.
But Super Star Wars in particular is still very, very hard from the fact that if you go a little bit off screen, stuff will respawn and you have to kill them again.
No good.
Yeah, and the shrapnel. Like there's a level, the first level on the Death Star where you're in the hangar bay, and you'll just go along, and then at one point these stormtroopers will randomly start dropping from the ceilings, and if you're jumping over a death pit, all of a sudden this stormtrooper appears and blocks you and you go straight down in the hole. It's just, it's not fun. And I will say as well, like there was one boss that I remember getting stuck on for ages as a kid. And once again, a lot of these games were before the internet was fairly big. And so I couldn't even look up a guide on how to beat it. And it was this carrier in the Escape from Mos Eisley level. Before you could start actually damaging it and taking its health bar down, there were these, I think, 5 or 6 different spots on it you had to shoot to break off first, and then you could start damaging it. And I spent hours on that freaking level trying to work out how you actually killed it, because I'm shooting all these different spots and it's not killing him. And that got to be quite frustrating.
Yeah, I never experienced it. I was always a PC guy. So yeah, it's cool to see these videos and hear the stories as well.
And I must admit, at the time, I never got to play through the sequels on Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but I've heard they're harder.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's fun.
The rage.
Yeah. But another game I was sort of playing around the same time, one of my favourites, all-time favourites, is the X-Wing series. So as a kid, because of Star Wars, I wanted to be a pilot.
That's cool.
And so I even went to a high school here in Perth that did aviation, was learning how to fly and that sort of stuff. And this game just made me live out those fantasies, like learning all the different ships and how they operate, the capabilities, like an A-Wing going fast but being fairly vulnerable, but an X-Wing that is sort of a more balanced ship, and then the Y-Wing is the bomber, and it was just really cool to play around with. Yeah,
I remember I got stuck on one of those missions. I don't know which mission it was, but I played it for a long time, just trying to repeat it. And didn't really understand. I actually rage quit. I actually haven't played it since. So, and then around about that time was when TIE Fighter came out, the next one in the series. So, and TIE Fighter was just amazing.
Yeah, I must admit myself, I played TIE Fighter as well. But this is where my heart was, and I love, like I said at the beginning, I love the story of Star Wars. And this one was one of the experiences of that, because there was the Rogue Squadron book. And if you excuse it, it's very well read, shall we say. But
such a good series.
It's such a good series. Part of Legends now, if you want to go back and read it. But one of the first scenes in the book was one of the pilots doing a simulator mission, which was from the X-Wing game, which was really awesome to see. And just that crossover that you get, which I really loved.
That's a theme along a lot of these games. Is it's either a scene directly out of the movie or a connecting story in between the movies and books and things.
That's it. Yeah. So many of them, they took a little bit that sort of let you know you were in Star Wars, but then went in a completely different direction, which was amazing.
And then my next one, X-Wing vs TIE Fighter. So from that video, you can see the sheer difference in graphical capability, and it was just a massive step up. And it was only 93 to 97, so only 4 years difference, but graphics at that time were booming and getting exponential.
I even remember the difference between X-Wing and TIE Fighter being more, and I think TIE Fighter only came out a year later.
So TIE Fighter was such a good story.
Grand
Admiral Thrawn from TIE Fighter is one of my favourite character of all time.
And that's another one of those crossovers, because I can't remember if he appeared in the game first or if he came along in the Heir to the Empire books.
I don't know the release time, but such a good character.
He is,
But X-Men vs TIE Fighter, and it's the first game I bought as a young kid or a 16-year-old. Rode to the shop and bought it with my own pocket money. So that was a cool feeling just to have that ability. Got it home. It was actually funny. The install disc was the play disc, and the play disc was the install disc. So I was super confused. Like, it's the first game I ever bought, and it wasn't working. So I rode back to the shop and he goes, "Oh, sorry," and he gave me a better copy. But it's also I didn't realise at the time. So we played X-Wing and TIE Fighter, which were heavy story based, and so I expected this to have a story with it. But originally, when it first came out, it was multiplayer only, or skirmish missions that you could play. So I was originally turned off by that, but then you kind of get into the swing of doing skirmish missions. And again, like you said with the X-Wing, learning the craft, learning how they fly, how fast they move. And then later on, they released the Balance of Power expansions, and that added a full story to it, as well as the B-Wing.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to fly a B-Wing?
Oh, mate, the B-Wings are great. I was always a little disappointed they didn't show up till Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But they were always, because they took a lot of damage and had a lot more firepower than what the Y-Wings did
torpedoes
too.
and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Also, X-Wing vs TIE Fighter is the first game I played online, or first Star Wars game I played online. Sorry, on a place called the Internet Gaming Zone, which was basically like a lobby of thousands of players, and then you picked a room and had one-on-one fights.
Oh, nice!
So you could see in that lobby screen, all the people's names and who was in the just chatting room or who was actually waiting for a game, and you just join that room and talk to them and say how you want to play. One big thing indicator was like a green indicator or an orange or a red indicator, which was your lag or your ping. Yeah. So you could see all the green people were US players or European players, and you saw us plebs in Australia with our 33.6k dial-up with 1,000 ping. A lot of Americans didn't want to play against that because they knew the lag would affect it.
Yeah.
So it was also, for me though, it was a good way to see fellow Aussies. You could see who else was a red dot and say, oh, hey, I'm the noob as well.
Yeah.
But when you played multiplayer, you both hosted a match. So I would host and play against you.
Oh, okay.
And then if I forget it was the host or the person joining got the lag, and then the other person, you'd swap around so that you both equalise the lag.
Well, that's good. That was a fair way of doing things then, so that one person just wasn't running riot over somebody else.
That's right. But it was very cool. And then from that spawned a website called Case's Gaming Ladder, and it was my first experience of competitive online gaming. So this one was basically a ladder of thousands of players again, and you just challenged people above you. If you beat them, you'd move up halfway between. So if I was ranked 50 and you were ranked 10, I'd be like ranked 25 or something like that. So I worked my way up the ladder, and as you got higher, obviously competition got tougher. Yeah. And I actually got to 18th in the world.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
And the fights that I was playing then, like we were kill for kill. So in that game, a TIE fighter is one hit kill. So you'd move, shoot, and in your mind that has to hit, otherwise his one's going to get you. So it was really cool. It was super competitive, but it was just a really good experience and almost the first real online experience I had.
Yeah, that was one thing I always struggled a little bit because TIE fighters were the disposable craft. They had no shields. They were quick, but they weren't very they weren't very hardy. And so they just could blow up easy. And like I always imagined in like a competitive scene like this, like flying a TIE fighter would be a very disadvantageous thing.
It was actually like that was the TIE Interceptor was actually my go-to craft. Had no shield, so it was one hit kill, but it had the 4 quad lasers, so you link them and you could chew an X-Wing shields in 2 hits.
Oh, nice.
So the idea was you drop all your power and this will come into our conversation of squadrons later, but you drop all your engines, not your engines, your shields and your lasers to your engines. Yeah. And Jin can drive around and try and dodge their bullets to get behind them, then sit behind them and shoot them. Because the X-Wing was so slow and the TIE Fighter was so quick, even if you were doing the same turning arc, the TIE Interceptor would have the lesser arc.
I must admit, I did notice when I was putting the videos together that we got here, how they really flicked around their power management a lot. Like that's even right now, you see it's all to engines, and there's no lasers and no shields. And there was even a point there they were attacking a space station and they were just rapidly cycling between their ion cannons and their lasers, so they were effectively firing both at the same time.
That's right.
So I imagine there'd be some pretty amazing strategies like that.
Shield management, shooting past them and then chucking your shields to the back in case they were shooting you, and then turning around. So it was really technical, but you could make it as technical as you wanted, really. So, but at that level, when I was playing the 18th in the world, you had to know, and it was Twitch, not the streaming Twitch, but it was Twitch gameplay. So you felt if you heard them shoot, you move. Yeah. If you didn't move, you were going to die because they were that good.
Yep.
So, and there's little. I remember going to LAN parties playing it, and there's a little loading screen that comes up, and it cycles through some tips for you. And I was pressing F9 to make my lasers full, X to make my 4 lasers linked.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you doing? Are you doing cheats?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just doing what the game tells me to do." And then you'd always start like a couple of Ks apart. And I forget the distance. I think it might be 1.9 or 1.5 kilometers away. As soon as you always fly straight, and a new player is just going to fly dead straight because that's where you are. I knew that as soon as I hit 1.5 and the little targeting wing thing blinked green, I shot and moved. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And then they would block. They're like, "What? What'd you do there?" So that was hilarious. But they hated me for that.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about the controls, because I found the same thing with X-Wing. Like, you had to read the manual because there was no getting around it, and even going, because I've been replaying it recently. Yeah, it was very hard just to work out by mashing buttons. You have to actually read the manual. I had to go find an old manual because the game doesn't have any in-game stuff. There's no remapping of keys. You've got to understand what the controls are, and like things like next target or closest target or target what's in my my targeting receptacle at the moment. You have to understand what you're doing. And I always found that the difference between playing something like Rogue Leader or Rogue Squadron, which are still 2 excellent games, but you were just using the control, and there's a limited buttons that you've got to do, and they're all within reach. Whereas playing X-Wing and X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, you've got a whole keyboard that you can do, and I imagine most people, everybody that was playing it seriously would be using a joystick too. Yeah. I'm going to move on from the flight sims, because I'm very keen on the flight sims though, but for me, Republic Commando as well was like such a good game. I'm trying to remember if there were Star Wars FPSs before this. And actually, I think
Dark Forces and Jedi.
Oh, sorry, Dark Forces. Why did I forget Dark Forces, man?
You got a little set here,
I do. I've got it over here. But Republic Commando, I absolutely loved as a kid. Well, kid, I must have been about 20 when this came out. But
still young enough.
That's it. Still young enough. I'm a fair bit older than that now. But yeah, no, and I still go back and play it like every now and then, because I just love the campaigns. I love that it started. The game was released about 3 months before Revenge of the Sith, which made it pretty good, because the last mission was a mission on Kashyyyk in the lead up to the invasion of Kashyyyk there. And even the first mission was the Battle of Geonosis, where you're playing out the end of Attack of the Clones pretty much. But the thing that sets it apart for me was the squad-based gameplay. Is like being able to control your squad of 3 plus yourself, and like say, go stand here and give me an anti-artillery barge, and go over there and do some sniping, or we're going to breach this door, so you slice that door terminal and we'll go in quietly, or we'll put a bomb on it and blow it open, and then and just seeing them do those maneuvers was just brilliant. And every time I play it, I go, why has this not been remade? Like, especially with the internet today, and how games could be. This could be an awesome co-op sort of a game.
Definitely. And it was interesting, like at the time, you either played a Jedi in other games, Jedi or a Stormtrooper, and there wasn't really anything else. So I think it might have been a bounty hunter with the Boba Fett game, but this was the first time you played like one of the troops. We've seen that, in the movies they were clone troopers and then became, real people in the Stormtroopers. So to play the Republic Commandos was just a really cool experience.
And that was one thing that I really loved about it as well. It humanized the clones, because this is a really tight knit squad. They know everybody. Like they've all got numbers, but they've got names for themselves. There's
Fives and those kind of
and that's it. And Clone Wars built on that as well, with how it went with humanizing the clones as well, and how they were, to the point where I always imagined it was just built-in conditioning that made the clone troopers turn on the Jedi and all that. But the Clone Wars goes and tells you that no, there's a chip in their head that makes them do that.
Order 66.
Yeah, that's it. Order 66.
They're humanized.
Yeah, that's it. They're humans, and Clone Wars did it more to show you how human they were. But this was the first sort of instance of saying, holy shit, these are actually people and what they're doing. And especially right at the end when, spoiler alert on a 15-year-old game, but right at the end, your squad separates and you leave each one at a turret so they can shoot down a ship. And in the end you end up on your own, which another sort of side note, I really liked how that mirrored the beginning, because in the beginning you started off on your own and picked up your squad on your way around. And then I think you even lose them at the end in the order that you lost them.
Oh, right.
So it was cool. It was really quite cool. Like, looking at it now and thinking at it in that way, it's really quite cool. But one of your squad members gets left behind. And so, the feels, man, the way these guys rage and just want to go after their brother, but they can't because there's bigger plans at play. Right. And the biggest disappointment of this game is that there was no sequel, so you never find out what happens to Sev. I want to know what happens to Sev.
Well, that's why we need a new one.
That's right. That's exactly why we need a new one. The AI in it isn't particularly good at the moment. There's been times like if you tell them to do something, that's all they will do until you tell them to stop doing it. They won't say, "Oh, you've reactive. That's it. You've gotten a certain distance away from me," or if there's a revive mechanic in it, so they can come and heal you and get you up again. But if there's a lot of things shooting at them, they will still go and try and heal you, and then they'll just get shot themselves. But it's still such a fun game to play through. When the way it's done is just it's brilliant, I think, and definitely deserves a sequel.
It should do. Okay, the next one for me is Shadows of the Empire. This was also a novel, so it was kind of cool bringing out the game at the novel kind of at the same time. I think it was.
I think there was also a comic book too, so that there was like almost a concerted marketing campaign on it.
Okay.
But yeah, the game was definitely the one I loved the best.
Yep, and launch title on 64?
It was, yeah. I think I remember at the time, because we were on holidays overseas, and I remember playing a demo unit of Mario 64 in a shopping centre somewhere, and then when we came back we got a 64.
Yep.
But by the time it was released in Australia, I think, because there was a bit of delay, Shadows was a launch title for it.
Yep.
And I know for myself, playing through the speeder level, this was the first time I can really remember playing it and just how cool it was.
Exactly, and feeling that wire go onto the 88 and then physically flying around trying to rappel it. So this game I played on PC. I played it later on 64, but primarily on PC. But I actually didn't play it till 1998, so I bought it for myself as a graduation.
Yeah.
I finished year 12 and graduation present, so a bit of a reward there. But it's also the first game I played with technology called 3DFX, and it was on a video card called the Voodoo 2. So some nostalgia buffs out there might understand what that is. But Dad bought that back from Singapore one trip. I put it in, played this game, and it absolutely looked incredible for the time. Looking at the video now, it's quite blocky and pixely, but
same with most of the games we're looking at, I think. But doesn't stop how fun they were at the time.
There was a mission where you played against IG-88. Leading up to that was this train level.
Oh my god, the train level.
It was incredibly difficult. And then fighting IG-88 himself was actually quite challenging too. To the point where I almost rage quit that as well. It was so hard.
You try and save up all your Seeker missiles and then just shoot them at the boss at the end.
But it was cool, using land speeders in the missions, and it was a very cool game. It looked amazing on the PCs back then.
Even on the 64, it still looked pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And this is probably a bit of rose tinted glasses in it, but for the time, it still looked awesome. It still controlled really well.
Yeah.
I know since then I've bought the copy that's on Steam at the moment, but it's janky.
Yeah.
It doesn't control as nicely as what I remember the game controlling.
I mean, it felt like, from my memory, it felt like the FPSs that you play today. So very smooth, very slick, but now it's extremely janky when you're playing it.
I do remember crashing into a lot of walls in this Mos Eisley bit, and right at the end of the speeder chase, there was like a thread the needle thing.
Oh, right.
And it was right at the end, and I'm having so much trouble with it, and you'd finally get out of Mos Eisley, and you'd be going through the Jungle Wastes, and then trying to hit this needle thread bit. It was that was fun.
And it was also the main character was Dash Rendar. So if you haven't read the book or don't know who he is, he was an incredible character, almost like a Han Solo type character. And his ship was almost.
That's like it. Even the outroll, because it was a YT 2400, I think, and the Falcon's a YT 1300. So they were same model sort of ship, but it was still really cool to see it and have another Han Solo type in there. That grey character that's sort of more looking out for himself.
Yeah, exactly. That was very cool. I used dash render as multiple characters in other games later on when you could make your own character name.
Oh, nice.
And also used the Outrider name in my Star Wars: The Old Republic Legacy. Yeah, I called it the Outrider Legacy.
Nice, nice. I went with Jansen, which was which is
Jansen?
another Wes Jansen, another X-wing one. Yeah.
Yep.
Just one thing I want to mention, like I remember there's a level where you go through the sewers. Did that freak you out as much as it freaked me out? Well, because you got the dying ogres that would just suddenly pop up and my god, yeah.
So there's the Outrider there on the screen. So that was a very cool ship. I love controlling the turret.
Yeah. But yeah, I just those dying ogres, man, they freaked me right the hell out. Like I don't know what sort of brought along that thinking at the time, because there was the book and there was the game and there was. I'm pretty sure I even remember seeing McDonald's Happy Meals toys for Shadows of the Empire at the time, and even a comic too. I think because I do remember reading a comic of it, and you just you wonder what sort of brought on that marketing thought, because it was almost marketed like on the level of another movie. Yeah, true. It was there was a lot out there about it.
The story was quite in depth, like Prince Shizor. Was it Black Sun?
Yeah, Black Sun Crime Syndicate.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see that, and I wish Prince Shizor and I actually got there's old models that you snap off and you glue together. Yeah. I think it's called the Virago.
Oh yeah, that was his ship.
Yeah. So I've got that up on my mantelpiece at home. But just that kind of storyline, I think Clone Wars, the cartoons, touched on it a little bit. Black Sun, towards the end of that season. Yeah,
but, I know the X-wing books kind of touched on it as well, because when they were going to Coruscant, they got a few ex-Black Sun people to help them take Coruscant. But
very cool story.
It is. FPS, not FPSs, RTSs. There was real-time strategy games. So. There's been a few on Star Wars. I think two of the first were there was like Force Commander and Galactic Battlegrounds as well. So I do remember playing Galactic Battlegrounds and how it was based in the Age of Empires engine.
Yes.
And that was quite good fun to play. I remember that there was a cheat in there for Simon the Killer Ewok. Do you ever get it? It was like this Ewok unit that would just demolish everything. It was just, you'd go on that and you'd just send him in on his own. Yeah. And just go, do your thing, Simon. And but the one that I actually liked the best was Empire at War. So Empire at War was a bit different from your normal strategy games in that. So most strategy games, you've got a mission, you build up your army, and then you send them off to battle, and at the end of that mission, that army disappears. Yeah. Whereas Empire at War had an overworld. And so you were looking at the overworld, and that's where all your resource generation and unit generation happened. Yep. And then you would send them off to a planet to battle there, and that's where those resources would get consumed pretty much. But you also had the story missions in it that would drive the story forward. So you started in your own little area of planets, and then once you'd finished there, you'd go off and get another little area or another sector open, and you go off and do the stuff in there too.
There was space battles, but there was also the normal troop-based ground battles, wasn't there?
Yeah, the space battles were interesting as well, because they were still sort of done in a 2D plane. Yeah. So they were just sort of floating units, but all on the same Z-axis.
Z-axis, yeah.
Which was still pretty cool, because it was something that hadn't been done before. That's right. And seeing the starships around, and like even like your little basic units all got special abilities as well. They would hold their ground, like even stormtroopers would just hold their ground and concentrate their fire. There would be barrages from rocket troopers, and I remember seeing Slave One was that you controlled Slave One for a little bit, and he had a sonic boom. That's right. So that was all pretty cool, and it was just, it gave you a lot of freedom that RTSs don't normally give you.
It's kind of very linear, but this is you could kind of play outside of the bounds a bit.
Yeah, that's it. Like you still had the story that would drive it forward, but you would still had the other non-story planets that you could go to and capture and do all that work there. And I do remember for me, like I've played a lot of these games, but the sort of game I'm best at is platformers. Like I love my platformers. first-person shooters and real-time strategy games, even turn-based strategy games, I like to play, and I'll try and play them, but I'm not very good at them.
Yeah, I'm the same with RTS.
Yeah, and so generally I like to build up an overwhelming force and attack. So and Empire at War let you do that. And then if you're going to a planet that wasn't a story mission, you could go in, send your troops in, and just auto-complete the battle.
Right.
And for me, I'm going, yeah, that's cool. I'll just generate new resources after that. And,
Yep.
and by the time you'd actually got around to doing the story mission, the rest of the galaxy was already under your control, sort of thing. And I remember... this is not Star Wars related, but when StarCraft 2 came out, I thought I'll have a go at StarCraft 2 online.
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there, well, I wasn't too, but like I didn't get out of like the bottom couple of rankings.
Neither.
But I played it, and it actually taught me a lot on how, people play RTSs and those sort of competitive forms. Oh, they are. I remember
those Zerg rushes are horrible.
Oh, they're crazy, and just trying to get everything set up and remembering, all right, that counters that unit. What build are you going? Yeah,
there's so much to think about.
Yeah, and this game kind of took a bit of that out.
Yep.
But by the same token, it also had extra strategies, like some of your bigger units, like on the screen you'll see now with the space battle happening. You can actually target certain spots on the starship, so you can take out their engines and make them go slower, or shields. Yeah, so that was also quite a cool little. Another aspect added to it that was very cool. And even things like when you capture a planet, they gave you different bonuses, like Typhera, which is the planet where Bacta is made. So in the Star Wars universe, Bacta heals things. It's a brilliant healer. That tank you see Luke floating in Empire Strikes Back, that's a Bacta tank.
Yep.
So when you're fighting on Typhera, and if you control it, your troops get bonuses for healing and things like that. So that's another pretty cool piece that they've got that just added to it. And like other planets will give bonuses for production, and so where you built, you might say like Kurita, which is the Empire's training facility for their cadets and whatnot. So you might capture that, and you get a bonus for production for units and stuff like that. So it's quite an in-depth game, and even the expansion, there was a Forces of Corruption expansion that they had, which went off the rails a bit, I think, story-wise, because it had like a cartel. That's what I was looking for. Cartel. And so he was trying to take over, and the idea was they introduced a mechanic where you would corrupt the planet rather than take it over. Which was also quite cool. But in the end, like, he takes over an Eclipse class Star Destroyer, and it's going, man, you're causing too many waves now. But yeah, it's still fun to play.
It was, yeah. More Star Wars content is always good.
That's right.
Okay, my next one is Knights of the Old Republic.
You guys knew we were getting to this one.
So this has got to be at the top 5 Star Wars games of all time. It's the first Star Wars game by BioWare, and for me, I played the previous BioWare games such as Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Neverwinter Nights as well, and I just knew going into this game it was going to be an epic story, and we got that. Yeah. So ultimately, you could do you earn light side points or dark side points, and then that obviously changed the outcome of the story either way. It had melee combat, so sword fighting, not just sabers. It also had, you could throw grenades, you could shoot lasers, and it was kind of turn based. So you could in a classic Baldur's Gate game, you could pause the action, plan your attack, and then carry it out. See,
I didn't know that because I didn't play Baldur's Gate, so I didn't know that combat. And playing Knights of the Old Republic, I always wondered why there was that little pause at the beginning, so you could like plan a little bit.
Yeah, so you could kind of queue up. So you can queue up. You know, you could throw a grenade first, or so before you get to the action, you could pause it, throw a grenade, so it hits them while they're together, and then they split up, and then you queue up some laser attacks on that guy. Get Chewie to shoot, shoot the other guy that's coming behind you. So it's very tactical, and I love that about those Baldur's Gate games. You can pause it and then kind of think about the action. Whereas, if they threw a grenade at me, I'd chip myself and it'd be all tits up before I figured out what to do. So this game was very cool, and you could have companions that you could swap to and give them gear. Very RPG based, so a lot of item leveling and character leveling. A lot of the time, I didn't really understand the leveling system, and wasn't a big D&D fan previously, so I just always clicked the auto assign to the statistics when you leveled up. It's not a bad thing.
No, that's right.
But I never played the dark side because I was always a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I never actually played. I was aware of it, didn't play the dark side in this game. I certainly played it in KOTOR 2.
Yeah.
But this game was just incredible.
Mm.
You know, when you visit different planets and visit.
And I think this was like the first time you went to Dantooine as well, because it's one of those planets you hear mentioned in the very first movie. You know, when Leia says go, they're on Dantooine, you go and find that there, and now you actually get to see that planet on here. You know, very very much like seeing Alderaan in Revenge of the Sith. Like you've heard of it, and it got built up, but. It's the first time you actually see it.
And it was cool, like with the RTS games, you'd see the planet or the planet name and you can connect to it. But this was, you see the name, you actually go and run on the planet. So that was really cool. The Force, you had Force powers as well. So I think from memory, for me on PC, that was probably one of the first games that had Force powers. This is 2003. I didn't play much before that. I obviously didn't have the console either. So it was all restricted to PC play. But I mean, Jedi Knight had Force powers. But that was a very linear story. Yeah. Whereas this one was kind of almost obviously the storyline had a start and an end. Yeah. And the same for everyone, but how you got there was kind of a little bit different. Side quests.
I remember on my first playthrough, I went, you know what? Korriban sounds really awesome. I know that's for the Sith, so I'm going there first. And I got stuck on a bit.
Rated?
Oh, it wasn't. Most of it wasn't too bad, but then I got to a bit where you go outside of the temple and you're heading somewhere, and there's this forced encounter with I want to say Canderous Ordo, or was he one of your companions? I can't remember. But it was like a Mandalorian type bounty hunter thing, and he would just kick my ass. I couldn't get past him. And but then afterwards I played it a bit safer. But I was like you, my first playthrough was light side. And I remember at the end I went, you know what, I really want to see the dark side ending to this. And once again, playing this was before like YouTube was a really big thing. Right, so you just go, oh, I don't want to play through the game again. So I remember using cheats to like take my dark side down to level 5 or whatever it was. But what the way they actually measure if you get the light side ending or dark side ending wasn't by where your force level was. It was by other markers in the game. So all that happened was I got the light side ending with my character looking like he was an evil dark side person.
Damn it, the system
corrupted. That's it. Yeah, but it was so good, and like the story in it, like it's like BioWare told amazing stories, and like I don't think anybody was picking up the twist that once again, spoiler for a 17-year-old game this time, that you are Darth Revan, you know, and he was such an iconic character that they brought him back for 2 flashpoints in the vanilla The Old Republic MMO and had a whole expansion around him as well. Like and there were a couple of books as well. That's right. It's just and it all started here with Knights of the Old Republic.
That was such a good game. I actually played it on. It's on mobile now.
Yeah.
So I went to Singapore a couple of years ago and on the flight. I didn't have a Switch at the time, so mobiles was the only thing I had. So I played this, and it was actually it holds up quite good on the mobile.
I when it first came out, I got it on my iPad and was playing through it, and now it was quite fun. It's still fairly true to the game as well. Yep. So it was.
And I think because the mobile and the iPad is such a smaller screen, it doesn't look as blocky, and I found I was more immersed when I was playing on my mobile than on the PC.
Yeah. So those were some of our favourites.
Now, the bantha poodoo
that's it. Some bantha poodoo ones. Some ones that are not so good. For me, the first one that I picked was Rebel Assault. Now, and to a lesser extent, Rebel Assault 2. Yeah. But this game was so on rails for me. It was not fun. And you'd go through and you try, if you missed one thing that you were supposed to get, all of a sudden you had to go right back to the beginning, and it was just it wasn't. For me, terrible.
I actually didn't mind it. So it was the first time I experienced using a joystick. But how sensitive was it?
Yeah, so
ridiculous. Like in that Beggar's Canyon mission, if you hit the wall one side, it'd bounce you off before you had a chance to kind of react, and you did the other wall, and bang bang, 3 lives you're gone. So it was pretty hard. Yeah, and just like as a kid, like it's things like QuickTime events and on rail stuff, like you might not have worried about it so much as a kid because you're just happy. You only had to concentrate on one thing, moving the cursor around and shooting stuff. But just by the time I got around to playing Rebel Assault, because I would have been
in my teens, maybe even in my 20s, the first time I picked it up. So there was a lot of time had passed since it had first come out.
Yep.
But it was not fun for me, not fun at all.
It's actually one of the first Star Wars games I actually cheated in.
Yeah.
So if you had a joystick, I think you had to play with the joystick, I believe, from memory.
I can't remember.
You had mouse control too.
Yeah, I do remember playing with the joystick myself.
I actually broke 2 joysticks playing this game. It taught me how to solder the wires pretty well. But when the LucasArts logo came up on the screen, if you did up fire, down fire, left fire, right fire, it had played this like jingle bells kind of thing, and then it'd say LucasArts in a kind of quirky kind of way. Then you could just press up, and then gain yourself a life.
Nice.
Because if you failed the training mission, it wouldn't let you progress. So I spent a lot of time trying to perfect the joystick movement. I couldn't get it, so I had to cheat on that game. It's probably one of the only Star Wars games I've cheated on. But it was good. I didn't mind Rebel Assault 2 either. The full motion video was quite cool.
Yeah, there was that phase, wasn't there, where games went, you know what, graphically we can't compete with video, so let's just get actors in. Like Command and Conquer did it.
That's right.
And,
that's cool.
But looking back on it now, it's a little bit cringeworthy because some of the actors they got weren't particularly good.
There was a way in Rebel Assault 2. I think it was again the kind of up down fire thing. You could actually unlock bloopers.
Oh, okay.
And the funniest one was Admiral Akbar and his actor. When he just turned around, he didn't have his face, like the Mon Cal face on. It was just a human. It was just hilarious. So for me, another not so good game was Starfighter. So it's not a terrible game in itself, but just the fact that you could fly. You start off in the N1 ship, which is that yellow ship that Anakin flies in Phantom Menace. It just at the time I was hungry for a new space flight sim, and I've been playing X-Wing vs TIE Fighter and another called X-Wing Alliance hardcore, like every day, all the time. It was my only game I played, and after a few years of X-Wing Alliance, I was getting a little tired, and we were all, as fans, were screaming for a new space flight sim.
Yeah.
This came out, and this is what we got.
Yeah.
So it was very different. You can see the video there. It's a little bit more simplified than X-Wing vs TIE Fighter.
Because I must admit I've never played it myself. I've only seen it from videos, but it looks very bright.
It is.
It looks almost cartoonish in the way.
It was a little bit more arcadey and didn't have that epic feel that the other games did. I mean, it's probably a good game in itself. I never finished it because I just couldn't get used to it, and I always went back to X-Wing Alliance.
Yeah.
But I've actually played it last night, and graphically it doesn't hold up. It doesn't have the bigger resolutions. But even still, like trying to see those ships against the backdrop of the stars, you're almost looking for the pixels to move to figure out where they were. So it's a little bit different, a little bit difficult to play, and just felt different to the other, X-Wing vs TIE Fighter.
And I must admit, one of the things that I loved about playing flight sims just in general is the feeling that you're in the cockpit. And this HUD doesn't have that feeling. Like, you don't have the front of the ship sticking out the front.
Exactly.
At least with like games like Rogue Leader, which I absolutely love as a game, man. It was such a good game.
I watched your playthrough.
Yeah. Man, I still remember sitting in like EB Games playing the demo when it first came out, because you could only play the first level in it. But anyway, that's off track a bit. But like, you could see the ship, like it was the third person view of the ship as you're flying around. This sort of loses that feel because you don't have that feel that you're in
the cockpit.
That's right.
Like, you have your instrument, you can see on the screen there you've got the instruments, but it just doesn't feel like you're in the ship.
Yeah.
So it's almost first person. It is first person view. I mean, X-Wing vs TIE Fighter had that, but you still had like the instruments of the cockpit.
Yeah. It still made you feel like you were in the game.
Sitting in it.
Yeah.
Whereas this one's a little bit different.
But at the same time, this was, the market that, that's it. It came out a couple of years after the Phantom Menace and before Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
So it was probably targeting that sort of
younger gamer, perhaps.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say something slightly less charitable, like the people that like Jar Jar Binks, but that's
I like Jar Jar Binks. It's cool.
Yeah, no, I like the theory that he was going to be the Sith Lord, but other than that, I'm not a fan of Jar Jar. But
I liked his dynamics with Qui-Gon.
Yeah,
so that was cool. And then the other poodoo one I found was Rebellion. Yeah. So I got this game in 1998, and I literally bought it. Like, we got in the car as a family trip, went to the shops to get some food, and I saw an EB Games there, so I ran in and got this game, Rebellion. And then for the next 12 hours driving up north, I read this really thick manual. You don't get the manuals these days this thick, but read it back to front.
Even back then, you didn't get manuals that thick.
True, but this game was just absolutely epic. But I think I actually benefited from reading this back to front because it's a grand strategy game. So at the time, there was real-time strategies like Galactic Battlegrounds, Empire at War. This came along, and there was one aspect of this game is RTS, but the other thing is grand strategy, or as we know it now, 4X strategy. So 4X was first penned by a reviewer that reviewed a game called Master of Orion. The 4X is explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, and that kind of sums up Star Wars Rebellion itself. I'm saying it's a good game at the moment, but the bad part about it takes like hours to play like one game. And at the time, it was multiplayer as well. And you'd get to a point, maybe an hour in, maybe 2 hours into the game, where you're like, I'm going to lose this. But to be fair to the other person that's been sitting there for 2 hours with you, you have to play it out. So even though you know you're going to die, there's no way to claw back and get the win the way the mechanics work, it was just tough. So you would spend another 2 hours losing. You know, and you knew it was coming, but you just didn't feel fair to just cut off and quit.
Yeah, that's right, and it got so complex. Like, I was looking for, like, I played a bit of StarCraft when I was younger, so I was looking for an RTS like that. And then I come across Rebellion, and it was, like I say, it's the 4X gameplay. It's more about the micromanagement of everything that's going on, and it just, like, it took me forever to get anywhere. And then when I had a space battle and go, great, this is what I want. I want these grand epic battles. It was my little shuttle going from point A to point B that's been intercepted by a Star Destroyer and got annihilated. I mean, the story person to me is going, oh great, you see all these planets like Mon Calamari, Bothuiu, and all those sorts of ones in there, and I'm going, this is great. But then you start getting into the nuts and bolts of the game, and it's just like, this is
beyond my level.
That's it. I'm not capable of this sort of a game.
And I understood what was happening, and I was so thankful that you could save it and come back to it the next day. But multiplayer games, you just had to sit there and take it if you were losing. So if you're winning, you're like, yes, but then you kind of felt for the bad.
I must admit, I always remember, like I said, got into StarCraft 2 multiplayer a bit, and people would see, I'm screwed, and they would just quit the game. But then that was the accepted thing in StarCraft. So you go, I'm not coming back from this. GG, you won. Catch you later. And I reckon Rebellion would have benefited a whole heap from that.
I think so. For me personally, I felt bad. You know, we've both been sitting here playing. I just couldn't. You know, if someone did that to me, I'd feel pretty bad. So
that's right. We've spoken about our first loves, first entry into Star Wars games, and the ones that we particularly wanted to highlight here today about that we thought were really good. We want to talk a little bit now about what we'd like to see in the future from Star Wars. And for me, it's got to be a squad-based shooter. Like, I'm showing the video of Republic Commando here just because I love it so much. Every time I play through it, it is such a fun game, and I would really, really, really love to see an update of this, whether it be through a co-op squad shooter. You might have to make it 2-player if you're going to do it co-op rather than 4, or something in the shape of Destiny, where you can team up and do some raids together with other people. That'd
be so cool.
It would. And you know, I used to kind of frown upon the Clone Wars era, but it really is the best place for something like this to take place, because, like, if you go the classical era of where the Empire and the Rebellion were facing off, the Empire had the overwhelming superiority.
Sure.
So
and characters like Grand Admiral Thrawn, those masterminds.
And it was cool, but the Rebellion were guerrilla then. They weren't this big overwhelming force that could attack. Whereas in the Clone Wars, when you got the Confederacy and the Republic, they're evenly matched. So, and even probably now's a good time to explore that post Return of the Jedi time frame.
Definitely,
where the Empire and the New Republic are on that even footing as well. But I can just see something like a squad based shooter being awesomely done in with today's internet.
Definitely,
because for me, I was never really a multiplayer game because I had crappy internet. But now it's so much better that something like this I could see really taking off.
What about, you know, with the Mandalorian series doing season 2, I think they just started season 3, Mandalorian game.
Yeah, well, see, that would be
How cool would
amazing.
that be?
And even going back to like the Star Wars Bounty Hunter, because I played that
true.
on the PlayStation 2. I loved it, like being able to fly around as Jango Fett on his backpack, and like the like you had the main storyline in it, but every level had bonuses where there were additional bounties, so you had to scan people and capture, and it was amazing fun. And once again, it told another story.
Yeah.
It told the story of how Jango Fett became the clone template.
Yeah,
right. And
so
it's just one of those things that takes something that you're a little bit knowledgeable about and expands on it. No, it was so something based around the Mandalorian would be great as well.
Definitely.
But then of course there's a big one that we already know is coming.
And we've talked a lot about flight sims, space flight sims. This is going to take the cake.
Oh, it's going to be so amazing.
It looks so cool. Like we talked about when I was talking about X-Wing vs TIE Fighter, the energy management, laser management, the shields. That's all in this.
Yeah. I lost my shit because I live streamed this, and we knew it was Squadrons coming at the time, but seeing it all and like
we were all pretty timid at the time. Too.
Yeah, but just watching the first trailer, I was like, I want to be excited about this, but I'm not sure. But then with every progressive release that's come along, I've gotten more and more excited to the point now where I've actually ordered a VR headset because I want to play this in VR.
Oh yeah, 5v5 squad-based combat. There's fleet battles, which look really cool as well and really in depth. Just looks. I've bought a new joystick for it. You bought a VR set, so absolutely pumped for this game, and I hope it's a really good story. I think it's after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, because I think it's New Republic and Empire, so it's after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see what they give us, and just how it all plays out. I'm a little at the price point. I'm thinking the story is going to be a little light.
Yeah, but by the same point again, I think is it 50 Australian dollars? Yeah. So it's not super pricey, but hopefully they'll give us a decent amount of story there. But for $50, honestly, I'd play that for a multiplayer only game, and that's a bit of a problem I've had with games in the past that have been multiplayer only, and they're $100.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
I wouldn't mind paying. Like Fall Guys is probably a good one. I paid $30 for that.
Yeah,
and I've gotten so much enjoyment out of it.
That's right.
Yeah, but something like Squadrons at a $50 price point, I think I'm in for that. I'm sold.
Yeah.
Like, and just a little. I'm going to diverge a bit here as well, but another point I lost my shit at was seeing Wedge in his X-Wing, and I was so excited about that. And for me, that was the best part of Rise of Skywalker, seeing Wedge in the Millennium Falcon turret.
So it'd be very cool to because it's all legends now, but the Truce of Bakura book.
Yeah,
I loved reading that because it was like Return of Jedi's finished. What happens next?
Yeah.
So when that book came out, I was so enthralled to read and keep going. So.
Even in the new canon now, there was the Aftermath series.
Yes,
so that took place, and even followed Wedge a little bit.
It did, yeah.
But that was about what actually it follows Snap Wexley's in it as well as a kid. So he came through and was a minor character in the new movies as well. So and learning, I think that's going to be a great area to explore what happened after. After
obviously the Empire's been obliterated almost.
Yeah.
And what's left? We saw a little bit in Star Wars Battlefront 2, the new one, about Jakku,
the Battle of Jakku.
Yes, that's right. And I actually liked Battlefront 2's story because it told it from the Empire's perspective.
Yeah, I would have liked a bit more of the Empire's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, looking up and seeing the Death Star and seeing what you've been fighting for your whole life just been obliterated. Yeah. How would you feel? And it's that feeling like when they looked up and saw it explode, like, what do we do now?
That's right. Yeah.
So it was a really cool story. So I hope we see a really good storyline from that, which then plays into the multiplayer. So
yeah,
I'm really hanging for the multiplayer.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited, especially because I never got to play the multiplayer X-Wing versus TIE Fighter myself, and I'm super pumped for this. So
October 2 is the release date for this one.
Yep, I believe. Yep, and yeah, just. I'm lost for words. I'm excited just thinking about it because I'm recently gone back to play X-Wing again, and it's still a fun game, but because it's so old, like you'll see a ship in the distance, but you're not sure whether it's a star or whether it's a ship because it's that pixelated. But this is just
these graphics look amazing.
Oh, they do, and like even seeing the HUD on there, watching it, you could see like there's your power management, there's your radar, there's your shield HUD, and it's just I'm super.
And you could if you put this video next to the Starfighters video, you could see what we talked about. Like this one, you feel like you're in the cockpit, whereas the other one kind of felt a bit arcadey. So
that's it. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Actually, if I think, and now that I think about it, Starfighter's sort of a more throwback to the old one. So if you can compare it to the Star Wars arcade one that we were going through, that's sort of what it was like. Yep. Yeah. And then there's definitely some positive stuff.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And then other games that we've kind of talked about with my friends over the years is a gel of multiple games like this. So our ultimate game would be one that has Empire at War as a starting point, from an overview. Then you do the capital ship fighting with the Empire at War engine. You can switch then to the X-Wing vs TIE Fighter ship to ship fighting. Then you could fly through the atmosphere to land on the planet and play like Jedi Knight or Dark Forces, so you have that as that part of the pilots and the soldiers side of the story. Then you have the capital ships, and then doing planetary bombardments, which then switches to the Galactic Battlegrounds view or the RTS view. So it's kind of a gel of everything: flight sim, Empire management, and then on the ground, so FPS and RTS. So. It's never been done.
I was about to say that sounds like a massive undertaking, but it would be amazing.
It would be incredible because it would suit every gamer fan. And if you only wanted to be a space flight, you just do that part of the mission. But my mates and I talked about that until we were blue in the face. It's just that would be an epic game.
Oh, well, that's all the stuff we wanted to talk about for today, but we can't leave without at least mentioning a few things. You were talking before we started about how you used to play Star Wars mods in Doom.
Yes, that's right. So that, for a long time between Star Wars Arcade and say X-Wing, for me on PC there wasn't much to play Star Wars related. So modding Doom was one of the things we did, and you could then shoot the stormtroopers and that kind of thing. So that was quite cool. We've got to shout out Dark Forces and Jedi Knight.
Yeah, Dark Forces, love it.
And I actually bought the collector's edition of Jedi Knight 2.
Oh, that beats my. It doesn't. It's got the back of the case, but it's just they're missing the front.
And it actually came with a T-shirt too. So that was the first box collector that had a T-shirt. You got to have a shout out to Star Wars Racer.
Oh yes, recently re-released on the Switch.
Yes, I mean you talked about that mission in Shadows of the Empire, I think it was, where you had to thread the needle. This game had that in spades. Played it to death. It's kind of going back to it is a little hard. The graphics aren't as good. But I imagine on Switch with that smaller screen, it'd feel pretty cool.
I haven't played it in handheld mode. I was playing it on the TV, but it still looked pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong, we're not talking like really brilliant graphics, but you could still tell it was fairly blocky, but it was still good fun to play, and like it still controlled reasonably well. Yeah. And like the games as well, like Force Unleashed, which was a massive start.
Xbox 360 for me. That was excellent.
360 for me as well, and the story that it added, and as well as the newer games like Fallen Order, which I'm glad to see will hopefully get a sequel. It's been referred to as a Fallen Order franchise, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed that we're going to get a sequel to that, because that was just.
There was only one kind of unbelievable scene out of Force Unleashed that I didn't really disagree with, where he grabbed the start. Was it the TIE Fighter or the Star Destroyer?
No, there was a scene where he was like controlling a Star Destroyer. Yeah, that was
a little bit unbelievable. That was the first time in all of the Star Wars things where I felt it was unbelievable as a Star Wars fan. But Force Unleashed 2 even was really cool. Yeah. The gameplay was excellent.
And there was like the multiple endings in I can't remember if it was one or two.
Yeah, I think both.
Actually, no. It might have been both, but I remember in the end of the first one where you can either you kill Darth Vader and then the Emperor zaps you and you become his slave, or you don't and you die, and that's, which is the canon ending, obviously.
Exactly.
But once again, adding to the lore of Star Wars, where Starkiller was the one that got the rebellion together.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's very cool. I love the connections that all these games have that just ties it all together. And if you read the Star Wars novels, you get more out of it even, because you know the planets, the characters.
That's it. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Thank you so much for joining us for our history of Star Wars games. I'm Straight Jacket Jim. You can find me on Twitter under Straight Jacket Jim, and also on Twitch under Straight Jacket Jim.
Yep. And my name's Inferno, and I'm twitch.tv/1InfernoX1. It's a little bit of a mouthful. But you'll find us there. And we both play a bit of Star Wars games. You've got your own Star Wars play series that you're doing.
Yeah. I'm going back and playing some old Star Wars games and putting videos on YouTube for it. I think by the time this comes out, there'll be 4 or 5 episodes in. So
they're really cool. Go have a look. Make sure you check them out.
But yeah, and also jump on Inferno. He does game reviews and all sorts of stuff for Game On Australia too. So give them a shout out and a look. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity, PAX.
Yeah, thanks, PAX.